Hello, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. Our time together this week is about 15 minutes, give or take. And Confessions is where I share things about my SEO testing, observations, and a totally unsolicited thoughts about our industry and perhaps where the puck is going. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 51 of Confessions of an SEO, our final episode of 2025. Now, just in time, because yesterday the December core update was called as being over. And I cannot wait to dig into more logs to see what might have changed, and I'll let you know what I find. Last week's show, I shared 3 of my favorite episodes from this year. And this week's topic is going to be all about what's ahead for me, for Confessions, and where I think we're headed to as search professionals. In hindsight, there's no question to me that this is my opinion, that the biggest discovery I leave for our industry is my analysis based on the indexation data as Google evolved from a keyword identification into topical identification of content. Now, I didn't know it then as I was doing this and writing about it and trying to describe it. I had some different words, and like when something's new, you kind of struggle to kind of come up with the word that would describe the problem. And it came to helpful content. And the biggest problem that we had with it was that it was devastating to many, and yet we did not have a clue as to what the helpful content system was measuring. Nothing Google said made sense at the time. Write content for people, not search engines. Write more helpful content. That's my favorite. Speak to your customer, yada, yada. Now, while some of that is good marketing advice, it wasn't SEO. So the question comes, how does a set of mathematical calculations measure the amount of helpful content on our pages? We know that when it comes to algorithms, it's not magic, it's math. I know people like to quote from the Google developer documents as if the rest of us cannot read them for ourselves. And they assume, or they take the stance basically by quoting them back to us, that this is what Google said, that somehow they are providing an answer. But see, that wasn't what was happening on the leading edge of SEO. What we witnessed was devastation. Like unlike any other update that had ever happened. Yeah, sure, I was there. Penguin and Panda, and yeah, I got hit, and yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, but still, we could figure out what it was, and we saw that we kind of made mistakes. So, but somehow Google was measuring something, and businesses who had been in business for a long time, many who had done a serious white hat approach, They were getting ripped out of the SERPs. Their businesses were failing. They were filing for bankruptcy. It was not normal. And once I saw in my indexation testing that it was only by creating a collection of pages around a topic instead of what I had done with every other previous test page on the same domain, it would be a different and completely unrelated topic on every page, on every test page. But when I got the collection of pages themed on let's call it a single and somewhat large topical node, only then could I achieve anything close to what I would call normal indexation and serving. And that was consistent across multiple domains in my testing. But that was only one piece of the puzzle. And once I knew that that was the key, I kind of talked about it, calling it topical cohesion across the pages of the domain. So so this is the problem. But then the next question came, and this really is annoying, and it vexed me for quite some time. And that was the question, people would say, well, does this mean I can't talk about anything else on my domain? That if I'm talking about this, I got to talk about this and I can never, deviate? And then, we had this leak of Google's warehouse API documentation files. And I started talking about things like site focus and site radius, all the things that in technical terms described what I had found in my analysis. So it lined up perfectly with it to know that that all was part of helpful content. So then the question comes, well, can we go too far? And how would we know that we did? Would this forever be trial and error? We would only know something worked if it worked, but we'd only be able to determine that after, lots of things failed. And then, of course, sometimes your failures can drag you down a little further. So why couldn't we measure this? It's like, what is it that we need to do so that we can know how to do this better and do it in a way that wouldn't run afoul of helpful content? And it's not really our fault, okay? It's part of, I think, a blind spot in our training and a blind spot in our SEO tools, because we are always, and we have always, previously focused on one page in isolation by itself. That saying, we could rank a ham sandwich. Now, at the time, as far as I knew, there was no tool within the reach of the average business that could measure a thing called site radius from the center of a topical node, answering the question, how far is too far? And if we introduced a related but different topical focus, how would we know how to create, like what the Google patents infer, things they call topical bridges within our content? Mathematical breadcrumbs that search engines and now these large language models, the AI, can follow and connect. So to quote Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. I've been in SEO long enough to remember keyword stuffing, while frowned upon by white hat SEOs, was inconveniently super successful. I remember when backlinks were literally placed in between paragraphs, in the white space between paragraphs, on pages of unrelated topics to the site that we linked out to, on domains with no centralized topic. And that worked. I guess if you could describe it as a stupid simple to game the system, and if you wanted to scale anything upwards, okay? So getting back to the tool conversation, it was somewhat disappointing to me after the thrill of finding out what the helpful content was measuring that I wasn't also able to bring, a cure, right? Here's the problem. Yikes. Here's the cure. And that was just something I've had to sit with for a little while. That is until now. So talking about 2026, I believe that you're going to be hearing a lot about my work on a project, and it's called Vizex. Now, Vizex is a WordPress plugin that provides a horizontal analysis of your WordPress post. That's exactly what I described in my write-up of what I saw, that once more of those pages were on the same topic, indexation increased. And the other thing that it does is after creating this analysis of your WordPress post, it provides a roadmap, what to keep, what to consolidate, what to remove, and link suggestions, not just links like those in between paragraphs, but semantic links, the kind of links that communicate to search engines as well as AI models. I cannot tell you how exciting it is for me to be part of this, having found the ill to be involved essentially in the trials of a new miracle cure. I just don't have the words for it. Now, the person who brought this software to life is a friend and colleague of mine, Kim Albee. The name of the software is Vizex. Just so happens there's a beta program you can apply to. And part of that means you get to be in on what I consider the most profound response to helpful content. That is the first helpful content analysis tool. And there's a lot more. So like I said, right now it's available as a WordPress plugin, and plans already have evolved to develop it for other content management systems. So what you need to have if you want to be a part of the beta is a WordPress site with posts, as well as your own Claude API key. So what does Vizex actually do? It analyzes your blog as a knowledge ecosystem. It's not just one post at a time, but it's looking at them, sorting them, and creating connections or potential, bringing that to your attention. And it does this, they use the term content islands, clusters of related posts, but that aren't properly interlinked yet. And then it provides you with link opportunities with specific anchor text and placement cues, and it's all powered by Claude instead of generic add more links advice. Now it assigns connectivity scores, so each post is labeled kind of how isolated is this? Isolated, emerging, well-connected, or is it a content hub? Think of the hub and spoke content strategy. And it highlights high-value content, pages that should be doing more heavy lifting based on your internal linking. So who is this for? Well, B2B marketers and content strategists who have already invested in, let's say, a content strategy of 50 or more posts and feel like the authority payoff isn't matching the effort. Let's make the juice worth the squeeze. SEO specialists, who are kind of keeping an eye on AI search and who are looking for a semantic, not just a keyword-based optimization layer. Not saying don't do it, don't do your keywords, do them, optimize, but also look at this relationship between all the entities. Now, there's also agencies, who need a stable approach to developing, sustaining a content strategy for their clients and in the way to prove that ROI. So it's not just a scattered blog, but it's an actual structured content ecosystem. Now, if you're interested in participating in the beta, there's a 90-day free trial. All the details can be found out on Vizex.ai. I'll put the link in the description. And we'll be having Ask Me Anythings set up during these beta trials, doing everything we can for you to have success in both search engines as well as the independent AI LLM models. You want to give them clearer signals about what you're an authority on, so it will create trust between your site and the AI, with the next step being better AI-generated visibility and more consistent topical recognition. So expect to hear more about this horizontal content analysis. And remember, you heard it here first. Happy New Year to all of us. Well, that's it for me for season 5. I want to thank you for being a listener. To hear from many of you who shared confessions, kind of being here every week after week, is something that you look forward to, and it warms my heart that we share a continued love of SEO and problem solving. Remember to check out Indexilla. It's my indexer tool and provider of the crawl or no crawl reports. Now you can find Indexilla at indexilla.io. Now more than ever, AI makes the indexation of your content into Google essential, so don't leave it to chance. All right, I will see you next year. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the SERPs.